My sister announced her pregnancy at my engagement party. Finally got engaged and was excited to celebrate, but my sister decided it was the perfect time to announce she's expecting. The spotlight shifted, and my special moment was overshadowed. I had spent months meticulously planning every detail of my engagement party, dreaming of a night where every compliment, every sparkling moment would be all about my love story with Orion. My name is Serafina, and at 27, I've always prided myself on balancing ambition with sensitivity. I work as a marketing professional, thriving in the whirlwind of creative campaigns and strategy meetings, yet my heart still fluttered with the vulnerable excitement of a girl in love. Living with my family might seem old-fashioned to some, but for me it was a double-edged sword. While I cherished the familiar warmth and constant support, it also meant that every personal milestone was scrutinized by those who knew me best. The day of the party arrived in a burst of late spring brilliance. The suburban venue was a tastefully decorated banquet hall in a quiet corner of our town, a place where the walls shimmered with soft lights and the air buzzed with anticipatory chatter. I spent the morning double-checking the guest list, adjusting floral arrangements, and rehearsing my heartfelt thank yous in the mirror. Orion, ever supportive and calm, offered quiet reassurances between his own excited smiles. Yet beneath the surface of our shared happiness, a subtle undercurrent of tension pulsed, one I couldn't quite ignore. I had always known that my younger sister, Coraline, marched to the beat of her own drum. While I cultivated precision and careful planning, Coraline thrived on spontaneity and unpredictable theatrics. Our differences had always sparked both admiration and exasperation between us. I recalled a conversation with my best friend, Anwin, just days earlier. Over coffee in a cozy corner of our favorite cafe, she'd teased, "Serafina, you know how Coraline is. She's always got a trick up her sleeve to steal the spotlight when you least expect it." I had laughed it off, but now that warning loomed in my mind like a shadow. During a quiet moment in the early afternoon, as I went over my speech for the evening, I caught a glimpse of Coraline at the edge of the living room. She wore an enigmatic smile, and her eyes twinkled with mischief, a look that sent a ripple of uncertainty through me. I tried to shake off the feeling as I embraced the joy of the day. After all, this was supposed to be a celebration of my love and commitment, a moment where everything was meant to shine in perfect harmony. I took a deep breath as I stepped into the party venue, greeted by a chorus of well wishes from family and friends. The atmosphere was electric with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft strains of a live band. Every detail, every carefully chosen decoration, underscored the promise of a night to remember. I mingled with relatives, exchanged hugs with lifelong friends, and felt a quiet pride in the life I was building. Still, beneath my smile lay the nagging thought that even the best-laid plans could unravel in a heartbeat. And as I glanced around at the gathered crowd, I couldn't help but wonder if tonight, in the midst of all this celebration, my carefully controlled narrative might be hijacked by someone else's unplanned announcement. The hours leading up to the start of the party felt like a whirlwind of last-minute preparations and adrenaline. I wandered through the venue, checking that every table was set just so that the ambient lighting accentuated the soft pastel hues of the decor. I remembered spending sleepless nights envisioning this moment, every detail a testament to my dedication and to the future I longed to share with Orion. In one quiet corner, I paused to admire a bouquet of peonies, the petals delicate yet determined, much like my own journey to this day. Family dynamics were in full display as I moved from one conversation to another. My parents, ever the epitome of warm but traditional support, congratulated me with beaming smiles and gentle hugs. Their eyes, though kind, sometimes betrayed a hint of wistfulness, perhaps a silent acknowledgement that I was leaving behind a chapter of my life as I stepped into a new role. Relatives mingled with one another, and I couldn't help but notice the subtle interplay of glances and half-whispered comments, each carrying a story of its own. Amidst the orderly chaos, Coraline floated on the periphery like a spark of unpredictable energy. I noticed her laughing a little too loudly at a joke shared by an uncle, her eyes glistening with an excitement that bordered on mischief. At one point, while I was discussing engagement plans with a distant cousin, I caught a glimpse of her leaning against a pillar, with a smile that suggested she knew something secret, something that I was not privy to. In that moment, the idea that she might disrupt my long-planned celebration stirred a faint but persistent worry in my chest. I wandered to a quieter section of the room to collect my thoughts, sitting down briefly on a plush settee. I rehearsed the lines I had prepared for the toast, words of gratitude, hope, and love, but the echoes of Coraline's enigmatic presence kept intruding. I couldn't shake the feeling that, despite all my careful planning, the night was poised to take an unforeseen turn. My mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps she would reveal a scandalous secret, or maybe she'd announce something that would irreversibly change the course of the evening. I forced myself to smile, reminding myself that I had worked too hard to let a moment of potential chaos define my happiness. As the guests began to gather in greater numbers and the soft hum of conversation grew louder, I tried to refocus on the joy of the occasion. I mingled, laughed, and even found a moment to dance with Orion, who whispered how proud he was of me. Every shared glance and warm smile reaffirmed the love that had brought us together. Yet beneath every laugh, there was an undercurrent of anticipation, a silent dread that in the midst of this celebration, something unexpected was lurking in the wings. In the final moments before the formal festivities began, I stole a glance at Coraline once more. She was by the entrance, seemingly lost in thought, her expression unreadable. I wondered if this was the calm before a storm. With one last deep breath, I gathered my composure, determined to cherish every moment of my special day, unaware that fate had already set events in motion that would challenge everything I had worked for. The party had reached a comfortable rhythm. The guests' chatter blended with soft music, and every corner of the venue hummed with the promise of a magical evening. I was in the midst of delivering a heartfelt toast when the unexpected happened. Just as I finished expressing my gratitude to everyone, and the room began to erupt in applause for Orion and me, a sudden burst of energy swept through the hall. From the far side of the room, Coraline strode forward, her eyes alight with excitement and mischief. Without a moment's hesitation, she climbed onto a small stage set aside for speeches and announcements. The room, which had been brimming with warmth and celebration, stilled into an expectant silence. I watched, frozen, as Coraline's voice rang out clear and bright. "I have some news." Her tone was triumphant, and as she paused for effect, an inexplicable energy rippled through the audience. I felt a sinking dread in my stomach as she continued, "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a flash of lightning, a moment so abrupt it shattered the carefully crafted ambience of the evening. For an instant, every eye in the room turned toward her, and the applause that had been meant for my engagement now transformed into a mix of astonished claps, murmurs, and a collective gasp. The spotlight shifted abruptly from the love I had celebrated with Orion to my sister's dramatic revelation. I stood rooted to the spot, heart pounding, as the room erupted in a cacophony of reactions. Some guests cheered, delighted by the unexpected announcement, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Orion's face, usually a beacon of calm, was etched with confusion and concern. I could barely process the whirlwind of emotions: shock, humiliation, anger, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. How could the moment I had dreamed of for so long be hijacked so callously? As the noise slowly subsided into a strained silence, Coraline descended from the stage with a buoyant smile, as though the announcement were the most natural thing in the world. I attempted to regain composure, but every whispered conversation, every sympathetic glance directed my way, felt like a sting. Guests began to approach me, some with kind words of empathy, others with thinly veiled curiosity, and I could feel the weight of every pair of eyes scrutinizing not just the announcement, but me as well. Backstage, away from the glaring lights and the hushed chatter, I managed to catch a few moments alone with Orion. "This isn't what I planned," I murmured, voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Orion squeezed my hand, offering a wordless promise of support, though his eyes revealed that he, too, was struggling to make sense of the disruption. It felt as if my entire night, the moment I had so carefully constructed as the pinnacle of my happiness, had been overturned in an instant by Coraline's untimely declaration. As I retreated from the public eye, I found refuge in a quiet alcove near the back of the venue. There, I could watch the aftermath unfold in slow motion. I saw family members whispering in small clusters, some casting disapproving glances, while others tried to salvage the festive mood by changing the subject. Yet every effort to distract from the glaring spotlight on Coraline's announcement only deepened the sense of isolation I felt. I was meant to be the center of attention, the star of my own love story, but now I felt diminished, sidelined by the one person I had hoped would never overshadow my moment. In that turbulent space between shock and sorrow, I began to replay the events in my mind. Every smile Coraline had worn, every hint of mischief in her eyes, now took on a new significance. Had this been a calculated move? Was this simply another one of her antics designed to draw attention, or was there a deeper, unspoken motivation behind her exuberance? My thoughts raced with conflicting emotions. Anger at being robbed of my moment, and a nagging curiosity about the truth behind her sudden announcement. As the evening wore on and the party's energy slowly shifted to accommodate the unexpected news, I resolved that I needed answers. Not just for the sake of understanding Coraline's motives, but also to reclaim a part of myself that had been obscured by the chaos of the moment. That night, as I lay awake in the quiet of my hotel room, the events replayed in vivid detail. I promised myself that tomorrow, I would confront Coraline and demand an explanation. Not only for the timing, but for everything that had led to this disruptive twist on the one night I had dreamed of for so long. In the immediate aftermath of the announcement, the atmosphere at the party shifted from exuberant celebration to a tense, uneasy quiet. Conversations that had once buzzed with laughter now lingered in awkward murmurs, and the lingering buzz of Coraline's revelation seemed to echo in every corner of the hall. I found myself retreating into solitude, seeking refuge in the dim light of a secluded lounge area where I could gather my thoughts without the prying eyes of an audience. I spent the next few days locked in a quiet storm of emotions. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Coraline's jubilant face as she made her announcement, a face that now symbolized the betrayal of a moment I had treasured above all else. I began to reread the messages from guests, some sympathetic, others tinged with the thrill of scandal. The whispers among family members became louder, hinting at old resentments and rivalries that had lain dormant for years. It was as if Coraline's announcement had peeled back the polished veneer of our family gatherings to expose the raw, unfiltered truth beneath. Determined not to let my heart be crushed further by this public humiliation, I started reaching out to those I trusted the most. Orion, ever my steady rock, sat me down for long, quiet talks where he reassured me that my feelings were valid, that my special day was not defined by one disruptive moment. Anwen, with her unflinching honesty, listened as I recounted every detail, urging me to confront the issue head-on rather than let it simmer into a lifelong bitterness. Their words were a lifeline, pulling me from the depths of despair and fueling a growing resolve to reclaim the narrative of my own life. Late one evening, alone in my apartment, I began drafting a series of thoughts, a personal manifesto on reclaiming identity and self-worth. Each sentence I wrote was both a catharsis and a declaration. I would no longer allow anyone, not even my own family, to dictate the terms of my happiness. I recalled moments from childhood when Coraline's antics had left me feeling both amused and frustrated, and I realized that our differences had always been a double-edged sword. But now, with my engagement celebration marred by her ill-timed announcement, that blade had cut too deep. Every interaction with my family over the next few days was layered with tension. In quiet corners of family dinners, whispered conversations revealed that not everyone saw the situation as a harmless accident. Some relatives questioned whether Coraline had always sought the limelight, while others expressed regret for having allowed the party to take such an unexpected turn. I listened to these conversations with a mix of sorrow and determination. I realized that beyond the personal humiliation, Coraline's announcement had unearthed long-hidden grievances and family secrets that I had never fully understood. Determined to restore some semblance of order to my turbulent emotions, I resolved to confront Coraline directly. I needed answers. not only to understand her motivations, but also to set the boundaries that would protect my future celebrations from being hijacked. That decision marked the beginning of an inward journey to reclaim my voice, one that would culminate in a showdown that neither of us could avoid. I knew that the confrontation might permanently alter our relationship, but I was ready to risk that for the sake of my own dignity and the future I envisioned with Orion. A week after the engagement party, the tension in our household had reached a fever pitch. The air felt heavy with unspoken words and simmering resentments that had been building since Coraline's bombshell announcement. One chilly evening, when the sky was a tapestry of deep blues and muted grays, I found myself standing in the quiet living room, determined to face the storm head-on. Coraline was there, seated on the edge of the sofa with a distracted look that belied the turmoil beneath. I took a deep breath and began. "Coraline, we need to talk. Tonight, it's just you and me." Her eyes flickered with surprise before a guarded expression settled over her face. "What is it, Serafina?" she asked, her voice cool yet tinged with apprehension. The conversation that followed was raw and unfiltered. I demanded to know why, on the night I had poured my heart out to celebrate love, she would hijack the spotlight with an announcement that belonged to her alone. I recalled every detail of that moment, how the applause that was meant for Orion and me was commandeered by her exuberance. I spoke of the humiliation, the unexpected shift in focus, and the painful reminder that even in the happiest moments, old family dynamics could resurface like ghosts. Coraline's initial defensiveness gave way to a surprising vulnerability. In halting words, she admitted that she had always felt overshadowed in our family, that her own milestones had rarely been celebrated with the same fervor as mine. "I wanted to be seen," she confessed in a trembling whisper, "to have a moment where I wasn't the forgotten one." Her confession, though it did little to erase the sting of the evening, unveiled layers of pain I hadn't anticipated. I listened, torn between anger at the disruption of my perfect night and empathy for the deep-seated insecurities that drove her actions. The conversation escalated into a fierce back and forth. I recalled times from our childhood when her antics had repeatedly overshadowed my achievements, and I voiced how each instance had chipped away at my confidence. In turn, Coraline spoke of the constant struggle to be noticed in a family where my success always seemed to come first. Each sentence was a battle cry, a mix of wounded pride, simmering resentment, and the desperate need to be understood. The room around us became charged with every unspoken word, every tear that glistened in the dim light. In that moment, I realized that the confrontation was more than a reaction to one ill-timed announcement. It was the culmination of years of unaddressed feelings and hidden rivalry. After our initial confrontation, I retreated to the solitude of my room, the echoes of our argument reverberating in my mind. That night, sleep eluded me as I replayed every word exchanged, every look of regret and defiance in Coraline's eyes. I questioned whether I could ever forgive her for stealing the moment that had defined a pivotal point in my life. The betrayal wasn't just about the engagement party. It was about years of feeling diminished, of never having my own story fully acknowledged. In the quiet darkness, I began to write in a fresh journal, each word a step toward reclaiming my sense of self. I reached out to Orion and Anwin in the early morning hours, seeking clarity and support. Their unwavering encouragement led me to a crucial realization. I had a choice. I could let this moment of disruption spiral into a bitter feud that would forever divide us, or I could harness the pain and transform it into a declaration of my own identity. After hours of introspection, I decided that I would not let the past dictate my future. I resolved to set boundaries that would protect my space, even if it meant confronting difficult truths about my family dynamics. The next day, as the early sunlight filtered through my window, I drafted a plan. I would host a small, intimate gathering, a follow-up celebration where I could address the incident openly with our family. In that gathering, I would make it clear that, while I understood Coraline's feelings of neglect, my engagement was a milestone that deserved its own recognition. It was a decision born not out of spite, but out of a fierce need for self-respect. I realized that sometimes the only way to heal is to force change, to take the reins of your own narrative even when the cost is high. My heart pounded as I prepared for the confrontation that day. Every detail of the plan was meticulously arranged, from the carefully chosen venue to the list of people I trusted to listen without judgment. I practiced my speech over and over, each line a declaration of my worth and a call for honest dialogue. It was not merely a speech. It was my stand, my moment to reclaim the narrative that had been stolen from me. The day of the follow-up gathering arrived with a crisp, clear sky, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I had invited only those closest to me, family members and friends who I knew would respect the vulnerability of the moment. In the softly lit living room of a quiet house on the outskirts of town, I gathered my loved ones. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, the air thick with unspoken words waiting to be released. As the clock struck the designated hour, I stood before the assembled group, my hands trembling slightly as I held a glass of sparkling cider. I took a deep breath and began recounting the events of the engagement party in a measured, heartfelt tone. I spoke of the joy of celebrating love and the deep pain that had come with feeling overshadowed on what should have been a singularly happy occasion. I recalled the hurt, the embarrassment, and the silent questions that had haunted me in the days since Coraline's announcement. Then I turned to Coraline, whose eyes were fixed on the floor, heavy with regret and apprehension. "I know you felt invisible, that you've longed for your moment in the sun," I said, my voice firm yet tender. "But stealing my moment isn't the answer. We're family, and our achievements should lift each other up, not tear us apart." My words resonated in the quiet room, and for a long moment there was only silence, the kind of silence that carries both judgment and hope. In that charged space, Coraline finally spoke. Her voice, soft and quivering, admitted that she had always felt like she was living in my shadow, that every success of mine had only magnified her own insecurities. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I thought if I announced my news, maybe I'd finally be seen. But I never meant to hurt you." Her admission was raw and honest, a confession that cut through the tension like a clarion call for understanding. The family watched as the two of us navigated a labyrinth of emotions: anger, regret, and a tentative hope for reconciliation. I declared that while I couldn't erase the hurt of that day, I was willing to move forward if we all committed to a future where every voice was valued. I urged our family to see that true celebration is not a competition but a shared triumph, and that every milestone, big or small, deserves its own space without diminishing another. In that final showdown, I delivered a speech that was both a plea and a proclamation. I spoke of the importance of boundaries, of the necessity for each of us to claim our own stories without fear of being overshadowed. My words were not aimed at punishing Coraline, but at healing a fracture that had long threatened to split our family apart. When I finished, there was a moment of profound silence, followed by soft murmurs of agreement and a few tears of relief. It was the turning point, a shared recognition that we all had wounds to mend, and that together we could forge a future built on mutual respect. In the weeks that followed that decisive day, our family began to navigate a new terrain. The fallout from the confrontation gradually settled into a quiet, reflective calm. Coraline, true to her word, made genuine efforts to understand the impact of her actions. She started attending therapy sessions to work on her feelings of neglect and insecurity, and slowly, the raw edge of her behavior began to soften. Our interactions, though still tinged with the memory of past hurt, grew more measured and sincere. Orion and I focused on rebuilding the narrative of our engagement. We planned a small, intimate celebration, a dinner with our closest friends and family, to reaffirm our love and to signal that our moment was still ours, undiminished by the chaos of that fateful night. I poured my heart into the event, sharing with those present the lessons learned about the importance of standing up for oneself and the power of honest dialogue. The evening was filled with laughter, shared stories, and a sense of renewal that hinted at the possibility of healing old wounds. Over time, I found solace in creative pursuits. I began writing about my experiences on a personal blog, hoping that my journey, from the depths of humiliation to the heights of self-empowerment, could serve as a beacon for others facing similar battles. My words resonated with many readers, and soon messages of support and gratitude poured in. In those moments, I realized that even the darkest events can be transformed into sources of strength and inspiration. Family gatherings, once fraught with tension, slowly transformed into opportunities for honest connection. There were still difficult conversations, and the scars of the past remained visible, but each shared meal, every heartfelt apology, and every tentative smile was a step toward a future where our differences were acknowledged and respected, rather than weaponized. I began to see Coraline not just as the sister who had once hijacked my moment, but as a flawed, beautiful human being whose own struggles were as real as mine. Now, as I sit here reflecting on the tumultuous journey that reshaped my engagement and redefined my family ties, I understand that every scar tells a story. My celebration of love was marred by pain, but that pain gave birth to a newfound strength, a conviction that I would never allow anyone, not even those I hold dear, to diminish the light of my own story. I learned that asserting my boundaries wasn't just about claiming a moment of glory. It was about affirming my worth, my right to be seen, and my power to transform adversity into triumph. In the quiet moments of a late summer evening, as Orion and I walk hand in hand along a tree-lined boulevard, I smile at the memories of a night that once filled me with anguish. That night when my sister announced her pregnancy at my engagement party changed everything. It forced me to confront painful truths and to stand up for myself in ways I had never imagined. And while the road to healing is ongoing, I now move forward with a heart emboldened by truth and a spirit unafraid to claim its own spotlight. This isn't the end of our story. It's merely the beginning of a new chapter. With every challenge comes the chance to rewrite the narrative, to embrace imperfections, and to celebrate every victory, no matter how small. My future is bright, not because it is free of scars, but because each scar has taught me to love, to fight, and to shine in my own uniquely brilliant way.